So let's go to Themis and Melanie.
Hello, good day, everybody. Next slide. So Themis supports this whole community to produce real-world evidence. We follow the FAIR principles, which you know from data, but I've actually taken that acronym and expanded a little bit for real-world evidence. We want it to be findable, accessible, interoperable, reusable, and most definitely reproducible. And so you need to follow the rules and the conventions when inserting your data into the OMOP CDM in order to make that real world evidence reproducible. Next slide, please. So quickly, in 2024, we had two major accomplishments. We established a formal project management process. Our project management board is out on Themis GitHub, under the Odyssey GitHub, and you can see where all the issues are and what part of the process they are. And then for the ratified issues, we now have a convention library, a Themis convention repository. It's a github.io site, which is also out there available for everybody to peruse. Next slide, please. So in 2025, we have two major objectives. We want to have one central location for all the OMOP CDM conventions. And we also need a succinct list of active issues. Next slide. So in order to meet our objective number one, the key results, we need to incorporate resources from other Odyssey standards into the Themis documentation. So we have dozens of work groups. We heard from many of them today. A lot of folks are building out expansions or specific conventions for domain-specific work groups. And so we want to make sure that all this is housed in one location and it's easily findable for everybody. So that is goal number one, is to either bring these into the Themis convention library or link out to them so they're available for all. Next slide. And our other objective is to get a succinct list of active issues. We have issues in the Themis issue library from 2018. So a lot of these things need to be archived. We also have a lot of duplicate items in there. So we need to combine these all into one issue. We need to find a sponsor or somebody that will take this through the process. So we are going to be doing a little bit cleanup in our issues. Next slide, please. Here's the details. We're on MS Teams. We meet the first and third Thursday of the month at 10 a.m. Eastern Time, US. This may be changing. As always, if we do change this, I will send out notices on the forums. I'll have Craig announce it on the community call. I'll put it in MS Teams, so on and so forth, so everyone is informed. Everyone is also welcome to join us at any time. So thank you. Join the journey and have a great day.
Great. Thank you, Melanie. We have our CDM survey subwork group, and I saw Nicole in the chat, so I think she's here.
Yep, I'm with you. So good day. Just like to have our mission statement in here for the record, but basically our goal is to eventually be able to do with survey data what we can already do with EHR data. Next slide. So just a little review of last year. So we did form the survey group. We've had our 1-year anniversary, and we did launch and review the results from our landscape assessment. And we started working on use cases, but really what we're moving forward with for 2025 are trying to relieve some of the pain points that were described in the landscape assessment. And of course, eventually support would be helpful for this. Okay, next slide. So we decided our first grab at some low-hanging fruit is going to be trying to do some standardized mapping for high-use clinical surveys. And this is basically because these types of surveys cross both the clinical EHR environment and the survey environment. So we're hoping we'll have high likelihood of finding vocabulary and tools that are already in place that help us map these surveys, and we also hope to be able to use this to set up a pipeline for developing standardized guidelines, collaboration with the vocabulary and other groups that this work crosses, and then standardize this and share it out to the community. All right, next slide. Our other goal, and I've heard this from some other group leaders as well, is to continue to engage community contribution and involvement. So as we continue to develop, we'll have the ongoing goal of creating repositories for the mapping contributions or links to where other people have them. Eventually, we'd really like to do a webinar or workshop so we can discuss progress and share out best practices and get feedback, and also just make it as easy as possible for the community to interact with us. So as we get more experience putting together some guides to help everyone share out with us. Next. We also want to foster collaboration with our groups. As I've mentioned, we're likely be working a lot with the vocabulary group, other groups within OHDSI, like the psychiatry work group, but also looking at other groups that have worked on harmonizing surveys. So Phoenix Toolkit, the Behavioral Project Group for HL7, things like that. And then again, collate this information and share it out. All right, next slide. And then as a part of this process will hopefully result in the development of mapping tools and resources. Again, would like to have a pipeline for identifying tools or working with development of tools, and then pilot those tools as part of our process, and then be able to document and publish those, and again, share it out so we have some validated resources to share with the community. And next slide. And then, of course, this is not a sprint, it is a marathon. With the exception of the first objective, we know these objectives are going to be years in the making. And so at some point right now, we're functioning off of volunteerism, but it would be nice to be able to get additional support so we can move through the process faster. All right, next slide. And then I just want to share out my contact information and the group wiki. The results from the landscape assessment are posted on the wiki, as well as recordings and minutes from our meeting. So if you want to see what we've been up to, and if you would like to join us, we meet right now, we meet every other Monday. Our next meeting, I believe, is March 3rd. But we're trying to switch to a non-Monday time because we have to cancel a lot for federal holidays. So keep on the lookout, and when we change the time, we will share it out. All right, thank you.
Great, thank you, Nicole. I did see Kenneth is back in the chat, but I also want to be respectful of the Phenotype February team. This was went a little longer than I expected. So do you guys, like, is 15 minutes? I'm sure you wanted more, but just kind of give me a sense. Otherwise, I can try to schedule Kenneth like a time for any time in March if you can join. Does that work for you?
We can also make use of 15 minutes, whatever makes sense for you.
I'm happy to reschedule too. So that way.
All right, we have a couple we had to reschedule into March anyway. So Kenneth, I'll work with your schedule. Let me first of all thank you to all the work groups. Let me just turn it over to the Phenotype February team now.
Sounds good. Okay, we will reduce what we wanted to talk about. Let me share the screen briefly. So what we've been doing so far, it's week 4 of Phenotype February. We created clinical descriptions for our phenotypes. We created the concept sets, the logic, the various drafts of the cohorts. And what we are doing during week 3 and week 4 is iterating over these cohorts, and we're using Cohort Diagnostics for it. And what we did so far is that we ran Cohort Diagnostics for 91 cohorts on 5 databases. We published it on data.odyssey.org, and now we also published it on the results.odyssey.org. We'll post the link in the chat for everybody. And what we are doing during this weeks 3-4 is all of the study leads with us are looking through this cohort definitions and refining their cohorts based on what they observe. And what we had is a couple of learnings that we observed well in this process with the study leads, but instead of going through that, I will pass it to Oleg, who will talk about what they saw with Evan and other members of his team in the cohorts that they reviewed. And then if we have some time, we will go back to the next steps in week 4. Oleg, I'm going to stop sharing. Floor is all yours.
Thank you, Anna, and I will start sharing them.
No, you take your turn.
Okay. It's a pit stop. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
So I want to use one prominent example to show our findings, and this example is a cohort of coronary artery bypass graft surgery. So this is a open heart surgery performed mostly for patients with the blocked arteries, for patients with atherosclerosis, and the whole idea of the surgery is to alleviate this blockade and create a bypass of the blocked artery. In OHDSI, we defined this cohort very simple. We just took a procedure occurrence of coronary artery bypass graft, or CABG for short, and basically this criteria, and also age above 18 years, so adult patients. And here you can see the cohort diagnostics. So let's start with the cohort count. And the question is, are we getting any patients at all? And the answer is yes. We do get patients from GMTC, even though the numbers are relatively small. And we also do get patients from Optum HR, Optum DoD, and other databases. So what I want to show here is that the numbers are very different, but it's too early to talk about our phenotype definition. We only see that they're different between the databases, and we see that the number of records is slightly more than the number of persons. This is absolutely okay. This is absolutely in line in what we expect to see clinically, because in one person could have more than one CABG. This is normal. And also we see that the number is only slightly bigger. So there is no 4- or 5-fold increase in numbers. So the next step would be to check the incidence rate for this cohort, and you will note here that I took out 2 last years, so 2024 and 2023, in order to stay in this area, just because we want the cleaner data and we want to make sure that the data is complete. And what we can see across the database is that we clearly have some problem with GMDC, because there is no clear pattern, and we see that the incidence rates for GMDC is different from the incidence rates for other data sources. And here it's a good example. Then we could actually compare the incidence rate in different databases, and also compare it with the literature data that you probably have by this moment. What we can also see here is the trends in other databases. For example, if we take Optum EHR, so the second one, as an example, we would see that more male patients, so this orange curve, more male patients undergo coronary artery bypass graft surgery. And this is also, again, expected from the clinical definition. So, and the green ones are female patients. This is the first trend that we can see across all of the databases. And the second one being the rates of CABG increasing, starting to increase at the age of 40. So basically we see no CABGs here. This is as it should be, and only at the age of 40 we see some counts with the patients, and they also tend to increase with age. This is normal. This is again expected to be this way. And the last trend that we can see, not across all the databases, but at least across the last 3 databases, is the decrease in the counts of CABG over the time. So from 2010 to 2020, we see the decrease in basically in every age group. And this is again expected to see. We checked other articles, and mostly it is connected to the development of other procedures such as percutaneous coronary artery interventions and alternatives to surgeries. So based on this, we can see that we probably have some problem in definitions of GMDC, and this is probably sensitivity issue of our cohort applied to this data source. So it doesn't say us that our cohort is bad. It only says that when applied to this database, we have some strange results. The next step is to check index event breakdown, and index event breakdown helps us to identify what codes been used in the data to get our patients to the cohort. And let's start with this IBM commercial claims. What's important here is to check the domain field. You see that there are basically only two options: procedure source concept ID and procedure concept ID fields. Procedure source concept ID means that these codes, they have been spotted directly in the data, and procedure concept ID is standard equivalent to this particular concept. So in one example here, we see the duplicate. That's because this concept is standard, but it is also spotted in the data. So that's why the rows are duplicated. So if we order by persons here, we see that the single arterial graft procedure where only one coronary artery is operated on is more prevalent than, for example, a procedure with 2 venous grafts, 3 venous grafts, and other procedures, so 2, 3 coronary arteries. Again, that's what expected because it's more common to have a procedure on only one coronary artery. And if you go through other databases, we see pretty much the same result, except for GMDC, where we already know that there is a problem. And what we can see here, that's all of our patients are coming from 2 codes, basically from one source code and the target concept ID for this code. So this one is mapped to this one. This is clearly some problem in definition. So we need to again check how our cohort is applied to the GMDC data source. So the visit context is also very important. Let's not stop at GMDC and check other data sources such as OptumEHR. So the first row is outpatient visit. The second row is inpatient visit. And CABG is an open heart surgery, so we expect all of the patients to have inpatient visit during or simultaneous with the procedure. But ironically, we see that only 121 plus 44, so it's roughly 160 something 100,000 patients have this inpatient visit simultaneously with the coronary artery bypass graft. Some of them have outpatient visit, and these patients probably intersect with each other. But we are mostly concerned about the patients who lack the inpatient visit, because they're absolutely impossible to get coverage during the outpatient visit. So this is interesting finding. We need to double check our cohort criteria, entry and exit, and also double check the ETL and how this is applied to the data. So it can be multiple reasons why we see these findings. And finally, let's check the cohort characterization. So if we let's select only one database, OptumEHR, and only one cohort here of CABG. And here, what we can do, we can select different analysis. Now it's specified for conditions. And with help of cohort characterization, we will be able to see what conditions our patients had during different time windows. So let's pick one from minus 365 days to day 0, so the day of surgery, and generate this plot. And we'll be able to see in a minute, yeah, we can see it now, that these patients basically had hypertension, hyperlipidemia. This is all of the conditions that are very prevalent in our population, but also are risk factors for coronary atherosclerosis, the main indication to CABG. Atherosclerosis itself can be seen in 58.6% of patients. Again, something that we would expect. Let's go further, and we will see chest pain, but also we will see things like acute post-hemorrhagic anemia, which is a very uncommon condition. This is something that the anemia that follows bleeding, and bleeding is a common complication for cardiac surgery. So we would expect to see this on day 0, so on day of surgery. And the reason for that is that we filtered to day 0. But all of the conditions that we see here, dyspnea, atrial fibrillation, congestive heart failure, they are all in line with the cardiac patients, let's say like this. We can also specify, so what we see here is basically risk factors and indications for the surgery. We can also filter exclusively by day 0 to see what happened on the day of surgery, and we'll see basically the same concepts with slightly more, so the percent of acute post-hemorrhagic anemia patients are slightly high here. And also the same idea would be if we check the post-operative procedure. So 1 to 300 post-operative time frame. So from 1 to 365. Same conditions, they will stay, but there will be less chest pain as it should be. But other conditions will be more prevalent, such as I can find it here. Yeah, it's here. Atelectasis. It's a common complication after cardiac surgery. So we expect to see it after the surgery. That is again absolutely normal. So to summarize it, I said that we identified some sensitivity issues if this definition is applied to the GMDC dataset, but overall definition passed the face validity, and we would like to investigate the patients further, check the visit issue that we have found, but as of now, the cohorts will stay the same until we get the data partners so we can check how the cohort applies to the data that we have. And this is it. Thank you. I will stop sharing now.
Thanks so much, Oleg. That was a very, very nice overview of how you thought about your cohort and how Cohort Diagnostics helped you. Anybody, in terms of the next steps, we will be running the second part of the Cohort Diagnostics today. So as we sent out an email to the study leads to reiterate, if you want your new cohorts or old improved cohorts in the second run, please mark the spreadsheet accordingly so that we know we can grab the cohorts. And then the overall end result is that by the end of this month, we hopefully will all finalize our cohorts. And for those who will be ready to with their cohorts, there will be an opportunity to submit them to the OHDSI phenotype library so that others can use your cohorts. And we will talk about that more on our office hours tomorrow, 10 a.m. and Friday, 9 a.m. as always. Thanks so much to all of the study leads for your involvement, engagement, and work. And we will see you on the office hours.
Great. Thank you, Anna. Is anyone else? Azza, did you have any final comments or anybody?
Just a reminder, because just the main thing is today is by the end of the day is your last time to indicate any cohort IDs you want to run in the next round of Cohort Diagnostics. That is today. Everybody knows that, we communicated that, but just saying that again. If you are still working on your cohort and you really, really have something still to do before the end of the night, just text one of us, Anna, myself, or Gautam, and we will work with you accordingly. But the deadline that everybody worked through, we worked with everybody to finish their cohorts iteration by today. But if you're still working on your cohorts and you really need the cohort diagnostic results for your iterations, contact us separately and we'll take it case by case.